Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is yet another installment of What If Cinema. And the film that I'm going to discuss a alternate version of for this video is Highlander Endgame. And before I go any further, I want to give a special shout out to Deshaun for requesting this review, or not this review, but this video. And if there's another topic, film, or TV show that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. And also, I want to apologize to Deshaun for taking as long as I did to do this video. I had some things come up in my personal life. There was some scheduling stuff involving work. And I also felt like I couldn't really do this video justice because I hadn't seen Endgame in forever. And I hadn't seen the other films in a long time. So I felt like I needed to watch at least the first four Highlander films before doing this video, so I could have the right context and really come up with the best possible alternate film idea. So I hope you enjoyed the other Highlander reviews, and for the long wait, I'm also going to suffer through the source. So hopefully you enjoy that video as well, which will be coming fairly soon. Now, my idea for Highlander 4 is that it is actually a direct sequel to Highlander the Final Dimension. Just like Highlander the Final Dimension took place 8 years after the events of the first, have it take place 8 to 10 years after the events of Highlander the Final Dimension. And it's not only a sequel to that film, but it's also a direct continuation of Highlander the series. And so what I would do is you'd establish that for many, many years, Connor lived a happy, quiet life with his new wife in Alex and his adopted son, John, in Scotland. But because of all this free time that Connor had, he decided to start researching the history of immortals. And that's when he finds out about Duncan MacLeod and other immortals, including this immortal that isn't technically from the same bloodline as him and Duncan, an immortal from China, who, through magical means, became an immortal and used his magic to create other immortals who were resurrected, reanimated corpses or revenants. And so Connor discovers the existence of this immortal from China and reads about his army that he utilized to rule over his empire centuries ago. And now he's understandably worried about what might happen if this immortal somehow is released from his prison. And he takes his son, who is now a young adult, and they go all over the globe along with Alex, and they're trying to find this tomb before anyone else does. And, maybe destroy it, maybe do something to make it so this immortal will never be released. Because I'm combining elements of not only the Highlander franchise, but fantasy elements and action adventure elements, which I think could be a fun twist on things. And you could say that Connor has gotten this knowledge due to the prize. He won the prize, so maybe one of the immortals was into archaeology, and so that enabled him to use that knowledge to try to pinpoint where this immortal is hidden. But he's too late. He thinks he's close, but he's not close enough because somebody else discovers it and the immortal is now released. And because of the threat that this immortal faces, Connor needs help. He can't do it on his own. So that's why he tracks down and finds Duncan. And Duncan and Connor form this tentative partnership of sorts, try to stop this Chinese immortal. And they have to stop him in a certain amount of time because in order for him to resurrect his army, he has to get his armor. So he has to collect and obtain different pieces of his armor. And different pieces of his armor have been strewn throughout different parts of the globe, different museums, different places. So Connor and Duncan have to work together along with, maybe some help from Duncan's friends, from the Watchers, and Connor's son, some help from Alex as well, and they have to find a way to beat the mortal to the armor before he does. And of course, when it comes to something like this, they eventually fail. He gets all the pieces of the armor. He resurrects his army. And I think a cool idea when it comes to his army is to make his army out of other immortals that Connor and Duncan have faced throughout the film series and the series. So Kurgan comes back, and Kane comes back, and Katana, and you could just have the different immortals voiced by their actors if they're willing to come back and do the voiceover work. Because my idea is that they're still beheaded, they still don't have heads, but they have like different like masks and like helmets and things like that that carry the spirit of these immortals because they're more revenants than anything else. And so that's the army that this Chinese immortal has created. So there's direct connections to the other films and the series, and some fun little callbacks to fans as well. And in a way that still technically makes it so, the what Connor and Duncan did in the past still matters because their bodies are dead and they're not really a part of the game anymore, but now they're utilized for a different a game with different rules because this Chinese immortal, he's not bound by the rules of the game. Holy ground doesn't matter because he's not a typical regular immortal. And I think it would be fun for him to use his magic in different ways when it comes to different fights leading up to him reobtaining his armor. So you could have Duncan and Connor getting in different sort of battles across different parts of the globe and fighting. Like maybe the Chinese immortal would do something to like create a small little a group of army, not really army, but a small group of fighters out of like some artifacts or something that are strewn around a museum, like maybe some samurai armor, and it comes to life, and then Duncan and Connor have to fight them, or he's using various different things to reanimate different like inanimate objects to combine them together into something that they have to fight at some point. Maybe he's using mind control to control like a whole group of security guards, and then Connor and Duncan have to fight them. Just some fun ideas, some fun concepts to throw out, and just a lot of opportunities for action and a lot of opportunities for Connor and Duncan to interact with one another, not only in combat but also throughout the story and bond. So you could have like fun lines of dialogue where they're having little snipes back and forth and the one liners, and they become friends throughout the course of the story. But once this immortal has obtained his armor and he's resurrected these other immortals, Connor and Duncan aren't enough. They need extra help. So that's when Duncan brings in the Raven, brings in the girl from the Raven series. So you could have a little tie into that as well. And that and then maybe Connor, he remembers a friend of his from the past who retired from the game, so then he brings them back into the fold. And so now you have this group of immortals who are up against this Chinese immortal and his group of immortal revenants, who used to be immortals, but he's just utilizing them for his new army. And it honestly makes sense that it would take place in the tomb of the Chinese immortal, and there's just a lot of battles with Connor and Duncan, and then eventually Connor and Duncan do enough to get close enough to the Chinese immortal and weaken him. I think a cool idea is Duncan like kicks a sword into the immortal's chest, and then he says a line of dialogue to Connor like, "Take this motherfucker's head off," and then Connor cuts off his head because he's weakened enough to the point where they can take him out. And he's technically not an immortal, but he can, once he's weakened, when you make it so the integrity of his armor is broken, then you can kill him like he's a regular mortal, like Imhotep, from the Mummy. And it just ends with Duncan and Connor like having a fun little moment together, and end credits. That's it. They stop the threat, which is arguably like the last possible threat that any of them would maybe have to worry about facing. Um, and that's the end. That's the end game. It's just one last fun ride and adventure with Duncan and Connor. And I think that would have been a nice way to give the fans something that they haven't necessarily seen yet, and just have it just be a satisfying, fun action adventure movie with the two of them fighting a new foe instead of whatever they were trying to do with what we actually did get with Endgame. Now, when it comes to the casting, of course, Christopher Lambert is back as Connor McLeod, and Adrian Paul is Duncan McLeod, and you cast like maybe a different actor to play the teenage Johnny. It could be like an unknown. Bring back Deborah Kara Unger. Bring back the actress from the Raven series. Bring back some of the other supporting characters from the Highlander the series. Like Burns' character, who's one of the Watchers. Maybe Methos, stuff like that. And for the villain, it's Donnie Yen. I mean, why not? You can play the Chinese immortal; it'd be perfect. A perfect casting. Plays the Chinese immortal who released from his prison, and then is like constantly taunting Duncan and Connor throughout a good chunk of the movie because he's always able to get the piece of the armor uh, just before they do, or they think they got it, but then he finds a way to get it back. And Donnie Yen has a certain way to play that kind of character well. A guy with like a smirk on his face who's just messing with them. He's always one step ahead, and he's very good at martial arts. So that would lead to a lot of fun fights between him and Adrian Paul. Not just one, multiple fights between the two, and some good. He can do some sword work too because he's very flexible. So I'm pretty sure he could probably do that fairly well. Like in the finale when he's fighting Duncan and Connor. And because the rules are just non existent, like there are no rules, Duncan and Connor could fight together and fight the bad guy because it's not against the rules. And yeah, you'd utilize Donnie Yen better, which they should have done in Endgame to begin with. And yeah, give it a better budget, a bigger budget, because in order to do all the stuff that I'm thinking about, you got to have a little bit more money to work with. Maybe like 10 million more, Maybe give it around the same budget as Highlander: The Final Dimension. I think that would be enough to get it done. And I think in terms of a director, honestly, I would try to see if Russell Mulcahy would come back, because then you'd have a good gimmick for the marketing. From the director of the first comes the last Highlander, something like that. Or you could bring in a director like the guy who directed Flashpoint, the Donnie Yen movie. So you could bring in the director of Donnie Yen's Flashpoint. Just need to bring it up real quick because I don't really. Yeah, Wilson Yip. You could bring in Wilson Yip and have his style brought to the film, and I think that might work pretty well. Or maybe another Hong Kong filmmaker, or maybe another filmmaker from the UK or the US who's did some good music video work, or maybe wants to get an opportunity to show that they could do feature films. So, which is similar to the choices that were made for Highlander 1 through 3. So maybe you could do something like that. Maybe you could give somebody who directed some of the best rated episodes of the series, maybe give them an opportunity to direct. And when it comes to music, like, I would actually try to ask some a band, even if they're not necessarily the most well-known band, but maybe a well-known enough band in the hard rock community to do the soundtrack and create a lot of original songs for the film. Or if you can't do that, get licensed tracks. Like the trailer for Highlander Endgame actually had a Rob Zombie song in that, so you could have like a Rob Zombie song, maybe some other hard rock metal performers and bands do some songs, or allow some songs of theirs to be used for the film. In terms of a score, maybe bring back Stuart Copeland to do some good work in Highlander 2, or bring back Michael Kamen. And I think if all of these elements come together properly, then it would be a pretty satisfying, fun, and entertaining end to the Highlander franchise. In a lot of ways, you could maybe even look at it just like a one-off, but just a fun way to just provide the fans with one last adventure with Connor and Duncan together while they're still in their primes. But instead, what we got is just something that was just very forgettable and lame, and it just didn't really feel like it was really worth the wait, let alone worth the amount of money that they spent on it. But anyway, that's just my thoughts and my concept for Highlander 4. A completely different new take on Highlander Endgame. And if you have any thoughts about what you would do instead, or what concepts you have in mind, or anything that you feel doesn't make a lot of sense about what I'm saying, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on what your idea of Highlander 4 is, or what you maybe think is necessarily not that great about my concept, because I'm very open when it comes to the criticisms. And I would just love to hear or see a conversation from other Highlander fans about what they would have done, and what they would personally like to have seen with Highlander Endgame. But anyway, thanks for watching this video, and until next time, I'll see you later.